Hello everyone, Maurice and welcome to Tanks Invest. Talk about investing, finance, fresh development. For today's favorite terms only. The investment on top of today will be Ethereum ticker ETH. First, I want to say happy Wednesday, everybody. Hope you have a great week so far. Respect to Ethereum, so records of 8:14 a.m. on the Eastern Time. Currently, like $2,515, up about 1.27% so far. With respect to the sell-off of yesterday, later in the afternoon, with respect to the Gary Gensler depictions during the Aspen Security Conference, or the forum, if you may, where he characterized Ethereum, or specifically in cryptocurrencies, as some sort of like a scam or some sort of like a fraud depictions, right? So obviously with this negative media affectation, on top of the regulatory pressure that we've been enduring, that the Fed is trying to enforce on us, right? Just to keep tabs, right? Firstly, with respect to 3 weeks ago, coming from Janet Yellen, on that impromptu meeting that she held with all the regulators around the finance sector, on discussing stablecoin, right, and the potential implications for the future growth and compliance structure going forward, right? And then subsequent to that, I think about 2.5 weeks later, we had a news on the revision for the infrastructure bill, right? And the revision has to do with basically tweaking the language around the relationship and the dynamics of crypto assets exchanges going forward. All right, there isn't any like specific tax implications or anything like that, but just a little bit more regulatory constraints on labeling which one is which and how is the flow of the commerce going to look like going forward, right? And then subsequent to that, we had another new bill that came out from Don Beyer, which got picked up about a couple of days ago, which was, based on the media affectation, it said it was a surprise. It was a very comprehensive article that came out without a lot, without any foreshadow, right? And the article, which is still in draft, it's in the pages of a total of 58. So it's a relatively comprehensive one, and I took a high level read of the revision or the draft, if you may. It's a relatively comprehensive one. Looks kind of like a pseudo checklist, if you may, right? Just laying everything out. Talks about tax implications, talks about regulatory constraints, talks about characterizations for crypto assets versus crypto trusts versus ETFs versus et cetera, et cetera. So definitely, a list that gives people, or at least to the Feds, a little bit more transparency or clarity, which is is a good thing. But obviously, with any regulatory constraints, it can drive some selling pressure across the board, right? But I think ultimately, if you think about this in a long-term perspective, having some, you know, security measures or compliance regulations, especially knowing the fact that the Feds, is spending a lot of the time and energy on pursuing something related to cryptocurrencies, it tells us that crypto is here to stay. Is crypto is the genie's out of the box, if you may. You know what I'm trying to say. So overall, great news, but obviously the media is going to spin in a certain way. That whenever you try to put some tightening, when you try to marginalize, in a profitability perspective, it can obviously drive some selling pressure. So I'm gonna go through technical analysis for Ethereum, knowing the fact that the London fork should be happening basically one day from now, right? And I know the time zone difference. People are saying like this is the 4th, this is the 5th. It's basically on August 5th. 8 a.m. Eastern time. So basically tomorrow morning, first thing in the morning. So I'm going to keep you guys updated, but also I'm going to take a look at the technicals to see how the momentum going, how we're trending so far, what are the level of resistance that we should be dollar cost averaging at. So stay tuned, stick around, let's make some money. So moving on to a technical analysis for Ethereum ticker ETH, on recurrence of 8:23 a.m. on the Eastern Time, current trade like $2,517, up about 1.37% so far. With respect to the red candles that we see here, is mainly driven by the sell-off that we've had, with respect to the Chinese tension news that we've been cultivating between U.S. and China, right? That is seems like is further worsening based on the meeting that we had between the U.S. officials versus the Chinese officials in the early part of the last week, right? And then also on top of the fact that yesterday Gary Gensler with his allegations, during the Aspen Security Forum, he characterized crypto assets as some sort of like scam or fraud, or some sort of like criminal vocabularies that he used to describe crypto assets, which obviously raised some eyebrows, and drives some fear among investors, especially he's a person of power, the chairman of SEC, right? So he does have some gravitas and influential power onto the power dynamics of obviously Ethereum, right? But I think in my judgment on or my recommendation for something like this is that um, for the Feds to be putting that much pressure and that much attention, if you may, onto enforcing some sort of regulatory guidelines or compliance pressure onto crypto, it's a good thing because ultimately we do need some transparency. We do need some compliance and regulatory structure in place when there's a lack thereof, right? Frankly, and especially this is a new technology that's being implemented into the financial sector and is dealing with monetary exchanges. For the Fed to do this is a healthy thing, right? But for them to spin this out of proportion, to call this a scam or fraud, to just scare people, is kind of immature in a way. But to each his own, right? I think we have to obviously read or listen to what people say with a great grain of salt, right? And that's something that we, as investors, learn to detect, right? To understand the BS between the lines, right? But I think it's still a good thing in the long term wise because we need to enforce some compliance pressure. Because for the Feds to put this much power on it, it means that it's real now. The genie's out of the box. So it's a good thing overall. I wouldn't kind of sweat it. I would just look at these as like buying opportunities, if you may, right? So now talk about the buying opportunities, right? Knowing the fact that the London Forex basically happening between these 2 days, right? August 4th, August 5th. I know that people have been convoluted with respect to the time differences, right? It's technically August 5th at 8 a.m. Eastern time. And apologies for the confusion on the timing. I do understand that there are people watching my videos internationally, so I should have been more specific with respect to the timing, right? But the anticipated pressure is still being baked in. You can see that we're kind of surging right now, but I would say the surge is minimal because of the rebound that we've had yesterday ever since the SEC news that we got, right? But the anticipatory pressure should still be in play, but there is some obviously cautious activity. Obviously, people are watching on the sideline, knowing the fact that we've been pumped up so much already. So the buying pressure is probably normalized a little bit. Let's say if there was no SEC news yesterday, right? We should have surged up all the way to 2,750. That was just a matter of fact, right? But because of the water down from Gary Gensler yesterday, we pushed back down to the next resistance level, which is basically hovering back to the 2,450, right? Which is a level of new cushion that I've identified so far, right? So what I see going forward is that if we see more positive news, or if we subside a little bit more after the news that we got yesterday, which was unfortunate, it's surprising how the timing of the news came out, right? That we should be, kind of hovering on a sideways fashion. But if we have no more momentum news coming up, we should ideally hover back slowly down to the 2,150, which is the comfort level, the true substantive comfort level before forming this new comfort level, right? And ideally, I would be dollar cost averaging from here. So these are the risk profiles you want to be mitigating going forward. Just to recap on numbers and technical analysis, with respect to the levels of, most risk averse type of buying levels, right? 2,450 is a great level to buy at because of the fact that that's a new cushion that we've formed. But in terms of like more of a substantive level, you could always buy at a better level, right? I think 2,150 would be a more substantive level that we go back down. We'll be testing the level of 29 times so far historically. So that's a great level, and I would actually to buy 2,250 between 2,150 levels, right? If you want to buy 2,450, that's fair because that's a substantive level that we're building ground on. And by us doing that, will form a new substantive platform going forward for us, right? So that's a great level to dollar cost average at. With respect to like 12 months price target, 9,800 to 20% corporate adoption, 4 times your money if you buy the 2,450. All right, so that's it for there. Respect my technical analysis on the Ethereum ticket ETH. Hopefully, this is helpful into giving you that clarity, that structure into how you execute going forward. Please feel free to hit me up if you have any questions specifically. I'm always available for you guys. So don't be shy and give me a shout. And appreciate you and stay tuned for things to come up. Take care. Bye.